What's the creepiest student experience you've ever had? I'm a retired professor of psychology from Yale, and the strangest encounter I've had was with a student named Calvin Dowler. I taught a psychology class of more than 75 students, who ranged from freshmen to seniors. My first assignment was to have the student write an essay on the topic of psychology, of course. The prompt was, "What do you think psychology is?" Some of the essays turned in were great. Others were expectedly half-assed, and some were never turned in at all. But Calvin Dowler's essay, my. It was almost as if he'd written it before and knew what was expected of him. Needless to say, I gave him full credit, and he was the only one who got that perfect score. Mr. Dowler was an excellent student, superb. Although I informed the class that I don't take attendance, he always showed up on time and never missed a day. Never. He always walked in class with a wide grin on his face. In the beginning of the semester, he seemed to be able to make friends with the other students easily, but then time progressed. And with that comes change, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. Mr. Dowler was an intelligent young man with an above-average IQ. I know this because he once told me he watches Rick and Morty. Isn't that something the kids say these days? All jokes aside, let me get back to my story. I began to notice odd behavior in my classroom, but not from Calvin. He remained his same happy self. I noticed the other students gradually moved farther away from him. At a time, Calvin sat at the front of class, listening intently to every word I professed, along with several other students. This day, however, he sat in the same spot alone. The other students sat together somewhere else. Why are they neglecting him? I thought to myself. One night I sat in my kitchen grading papers. The assignment this time was to write about a childhood experience that the students believed helped shape who they were now, whether it be in a positive or negative way. Then I read Calvin Dowler's essay. I picked it up, as I always did, with excitement and genuine anticipation. Like I said before, he was a great student who never failed to impress. But this must have been a mistake. As my eyes raced down the page, my heart began to beat rapidly. His essay was inundated with curse words and detailed gory descriptions of some event. One line read, "I tried to catch the bitch, but she was too fast. She hit me in the back of my head pretty good. Gotta give her that." There was blood everywhere, but I just sat there, laughing like a lunatic. Whether or not these words actually transpired, I wasn't sure. The week before the end of the semester was what I like to call the opening of the floodgates. That's because students would come to my office hours to ask me their questions before the final exam, hoping to salvage their grades in the last week. My office hours were late. They began at 6 o'clock p.m. and ended at 7:45 p.m. The students didn't like this, of course, but they also didn't like failing the class. One student named Adeline walked in. She was also one of my top-performing students, so I wasn't surprised to see her show up so late to get some extra help. She also happened to be one of Calvin's friends, or former friend. I couldn't help myself. I asked her why she and the others were ignoring him lately. "Professor Calvin's not who you think he is. I don't want to say too much. I actually don't want to get involved if you don't mind," she stuttered. She didn't look at me when she said that, implying something. I wasn't sure. There are several reasons why someone won't make eye contact with you in a conversation, including emotions of fear. I let it go. I responded, "That's fine. I didn't mean to be a bother. I just found it strange, because you all seemed to be getting along in the beginning of the semester." Adeline wasn't the last student who visited during my office hours. One student after another came by to ask questions and get help before the exam, and then Calvin showed up. It was 7:53 p.m., and my office hours were now over, but I made an exception for Calvin. After all, he was my best student, but I also wanted to ask him some questions myself. He walked in and sat down, with his eyes on the floor the entire time. Before I could speak, he let out a quick sorry, pretending to be ignorant. I tilted my head, waiting for elaboration. "I think I sent you something in place of my actual essay assignment." "That was an accident. I didn't mean to turn that in. I have no idea how it got mixed up in there." "It's fine. Here you are." I handed back to him his foul, gruesome, curse-riddled essay. He then unexpectedly got up and headed for the door. I asked him where he was going. "Is that it? You sure you don't have any questions before the final?" "No, I'll be fine," he responded. I didn't get to ask him my questions. Mainly, why did he write that in the first place? It was dark outside by the time he left, but I didn't leave just then. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I began to connect the dots, sitting there at my desk, as if I was solving a mystery. Students have shunned him, including his best friends and his study group. He accidentally sends me this sadistic letter, which even now, I have no idea if it's true or not. Moreover, he always had on this fake smile, this forced personality of happiness. But lately, he's been showing antisocial behavior. Adeline seemed nervous when I asked her about him. What's going on? Maybe the kid's a psychopath. But how did I miss something like that in one of my own students? Nonsense. He's just going through a phase. A very weird, unusual phase. As I sat there thinking all this, I noticed the time. 8:34 p.m. I grabbed my coat, switched off the lights, locked up my office, and left the building. I got in my car and started the engine. I drove off, speeding through the empty streets. I made a sharp turn, spilling my cold, forgotten coffee all over the passenger seat. When I arrived at the next stop sign, I took some time to clean up a little. That's when I noticed Calvin's letter, the same one I returned to him just a few minutes ago, sitting on the passenger seat. I was shocked and confused. As I continued driving, I adjusted my rearview mirror, only to find that a wide male grin had filled it. It was Calvin.